So I'm going to read from Good Night, the Pleasure Was Ours, which has just come out. People can hear me okay? It's all right? Good. So this is the third and final book in the trilogy that includes Now That the Audience is Assembled and The Voice in the Headphones. I didn't come up with a title for the trilogy. You know, like it takes a while to say that each time. Now That the Pleasure, Now That the Audience is Assembled describes a fictional concert, all-night concert. The Voice in the Headphones describes a fictional day of working in the recording studio, frantically trying to finish a film soundtrack, and where each of those take place over the course of 24 hours. Good Night, the Pleasure Was Ours, by my reckoning, takes about 30 years. So it keeps skipping forward, and occasionally you'll hear this talismanic phrase, different group this time. So I'm going to read two excerpts from it, and then I'm going to play some new music that I've written in the last couple of weeks. And the first excerpt is from the very beginning of the book, and I think that there are some clues as to when this is taking place and where it might be taking place. So, the child persists in speaking a language the adults don't understand. The adults persist in responding in a language the child rejects as gibberish. What this unaccompanied kid is doing at soundcheck is on her dad, who's out scaring up catering. It dawns on the child that the musicians don't communicate using words, the three of them flummoxed by the most basic questions. They don't laugh at jokes, they laugh between jokes, they fake laugh at nothing and nowhere. She starts again and delivers it differently, cascading impatient tones accelerating toward birdsong, still to no effect other than the blankly expectant faces of adults. All of this flickers hilarious and exasperating to the child, she's not giving up, and jibes with her experience of the steady influx of mute visitors carting musical instruments, clinging to, futzing with, sheltering behind, the daily flow of ridiculous strangers. Every stage its own stickiness. Stu Sutcliffe trod these perilously gapped planks of wood. Pete Best did his very when he bashed his kit night after night on this exact spot. Here at the center of medieval St. Pauli, pilgrims still alight and descend the narrow wooden staircase to amble on stage and inspect the damage wrought by boots and bass drum spurs. This celebrated stage could pass for 1,000 years old. It gives unpredictably with each step during the load-in, each uncertain stagger step beneath an amplifier to be positioned just so, an awesome decades-old Pilsner lacquer postponing inevitable collapse. Several hours later, in one of the smallest venues of the tour, one of the most deliriously crowded and vilely pit-like pungent, musicians and audience surge back and forth in wave-like motions across a fugitive gap, a lopsided tug-of-war of 3 versus 100, with each side blithe to the other's backstory. Pleasurable seething siege, smudgeable history painting, commemorating Thursday or Friday or Tuesday, and whoever rolls into town, whichever town, just a band, just a crowd. But over 3/4 of an hour, some nights it happens within 10 seconds, the two sides wake and warm to the excellence of the other, plumb the mystery of the first encounter with both sides partaking in, demanding volume and group churn. Mandatory eye contact means it's everyone's churn. Overwhelming ricochet superimposes reflection upon reflection, agglomerates, laminates, embosses, sphere bisected by symbol shimmer, amplify everything. It's easy to learn the thing that makes the audience howl. The pulling up quick, potent milliseconds of silence, tinnitus pre-echo, tremor graduating to temblor, ominous absence of impact. Don't leave me bewildered. There's only one thing I can do. There's only one thing I can say. We're still waiting, zoomed in, disorientingly close, helplessly inhabiting the moment between, a rapidly unspooling string of moments before the next beat arrives. Electricity spreads silently through the atria, through every dramatically stilled chest in the joint. The sharpshooters calm between beats, screenshot the trough of a wave, take aim, take care to aim with redoubled care amidst abandon and the abandonment of downbeat. In the halted progress of chaos, a flying fish seizes, bullseye. There's still time to squeeze off a second shot between beats. In the stillness after the catch of a crash cymbal between thumb and forefinger, energy transferred from bronze alloy to drummer's throbbing golden arm. In the multiform stillness that follows the muting of strings, amplifiers at the ready, amplifiers humming, amplifiers pawing and pleading to do what amplifiers do best, always at the behest. Everyone, don't breathe, not yet. Continue to hold this call maybe, come on, this is nothing, the time it takes for eyes to widen comically or batten down in advance of a plunge, a fork in the audience's road of self-preservation. The horizon of the event curves with an abrupt raising of drumsticks and three musicians' telepathic twitch. Gravity torques, down we go. Everyone hold that breath, then scream like we rehearsed. Just kidding, there was no rehearsal. There's never a rehearsal. Just scream, everybody, because that's how we sound the missing chord. The multiple octave cluster of however many forearms across the keyboard, knocking the wind out of disabusing, disused pipes. Some go high and some bellow and bray as low as they can, to each their own scream, the chord voiced as the occasion demands, impossible to improve upon. It's the scream this audience instinctively feels it was convened to make, the scream this audience was destined to and damn right deserves to make. The house screams its collective authority, finds its unifying aesthetic, then in a flash is cruelly overmatched. The musicians see an opening and pounce. They produce a jagged, deafening sound, the most lacerating attack of which they're collectively capable. All the howling voices in the room are enveloped, voices recast as unheard music, lungs strain, throats burned to no audible effect, blood vessels in the brain narrowed, silhouettes pitched forward in forceful completion of exhales. The audience ministers to its dizziness with a synchronized slug of Flensburger pills. Then they take a shared deep breath and scream again. Maybe 100 against 3 doesn't seem such a fair fight, not with the band's amplification, sound caromming like mad and attacking from all sides. The musicians flatter themselves that they're in command of the situation. Over the course of the tour, each of the 3 band members will come to regard this gesture and its response differently, whether as manifestation of daily or nightly improvised community, as physical release, as bulletproof joke, stupider and more profound with each telling, as musicianship, as showmanship, as diagnostic stimulus, as difficult to shake habit, as gesture, as empty gesture, as placeholder, as void, as vacuum, as ventriloquy, as puppetry, as political theater, as incoherent political theater, as violence, as carte blanche, as cashed-in chips, as blanket disrespect. The audience won't lose sleep over it. Instead, confident that they're the ones who make it happen. The trick is in the timing in which the audience takes understandable pride. The lacerating, etc. roar doesn't arrive until they give the sign, and it's in their power to leave the band hanging through what could devolve into the unending pickup. The audience might turn tail and march up the steps and out of the venue in protest, past the merch table with neither glance nor purchase. The bartender and sound engineer and promoter as well. Everyone could choose to pack it in and leave the trio alone to end the standoff, the night their bluff was called, and break down their gear and let themselves out. The audience decides when not to scream. A splinter of the true stage lodges itself in the heel of the barefoot drummer. It nests there for decades, always. One explanation of how a life unfolds. In the breather before the next song, the tall bass player who's in it for the hell of it, the childhood friend who 3 months from now will return to libraries and lecture halls, a mensch among music lifers in the making, takes the opportunity to fetch his smokes from a corduroy shearling jacket, shakes the pack, up jumps the square. He lifts pack to mouth and flicks a brass Zippo up the side of a pant leg, victoriously lights, sucks. After a lag of scant seconds, a closed-circuit television delay, everyone reaches for their own smokes. The inchoate collective thought bubble of gratification is punctured by a pointillistic sound field of flicks and match strikes, and a great exhaled tobacco cloud drifts toward the stage. The bassist screws the lit cigarette upright between headstock and dropped D-string and recommits to not cracking his skull on the low-hanging speakers, looks to the drummer to count us back in. The end of the gig coincides with a procession of DJs and record crates down the stairs of the venue. There's a line out the door that extends into the street and down the block as audiences for the back-to-back events overlap. Business-like hands snap folding tables into place on stage, and before the first amp has been moved, the needle drops on a freshly unsheathed 12-inch. The trio's post-show elation sometimes dissipates in the changeover, sometimes continues to bloom. The group mood is unpredictable and hinges on the slightest of details: the perceived temperature of greetings, body language prized for charming opacity, screwball mistranslation, and how quickly the DJ gets people onto the dance floor in these moments of maximum confusion, of simultaneous entrances and exits. An urgent question relates to settings on the time machine. Are we entering retro mode, or can we all agree to hell with this decade? To hell with what preceded it? Will the DJ set the controls so that we can abandon this exasperating decade, the sclerotic century, the abdicating millennium? Don't forget that somewhere at this moment, the orchestra is chanting and marching and beating the drums, unison singing, 10 more years till the year 2000. So this second excerpt skips forward, I don't know, 10 years, 12 years? You know, you tell me. Forward in time, a decade or more. Back in the States, at the start of a show in front of a capacity audience, a singer confidently steps to the microphone, and a plastic cup with 16 ounces of the cheapest beer on tap at this oversized corner bar finds its target, explodes in his face. Different group this time. I think disbelief is the word. They've been on a month-long upswing, and their homecoming show seemed a celebration until the moment of impact. It's the electric version of an ensemble with no fixed personnel, the former power trio that renamed and rededicated itself, fundamentally altered the mission, sometimes stripping down to 2 acoustic guitars, twin sketch pads, the whole shebang meant to jibe with public transportation or touring in a compact car, able to occupy a stage plot the size of a couch. Electronic sound reappeared as a medium in which to breathe deeply for everyone to thrive. Electronic sound returned with resonances mingled, oscillators abetting the sustain of acoustic instruments, overtone resplendent steel strings otherwise prone to decay and dying, to mortal transverse shimmer. Participants cast a skeptical eye on allegiances and needless distinctions between acoustic and electronic. Pressure strikes the ear. It fluctuates the microphone's diaphragm, and we grant the engineer permission to measure it 44,100 times per second. What aids resonance, what facilitates sustain, what may blend what may, and oh, what a whirl. Still, there are sound checks, input lists, dedicated channels. One performs on an instrument or instruments, one acts as an instrumentalist. Take a gig at the neighborhood dive. Take a gig at a gallery or jazz club or unfinished space. Take the gig in the parking garage. Take most any gig. Take them all to manifest a vision of nimbleness and responsiveness to one's surroundings. The earliest outings of a duo version of the group attracted interest in part as novelty, post-punk dripping faucet music, the inverse of power and the obverse of pop. Neglected, not even scorned folk instruments provoked conversation among spectators in the middle of performances while musicians fantasized about a transparent curtain ringing down at the press of a button, the audience sundered by acoustic baffle. They observed friends bands in the role of oddball opening act in front of vastly larger crowds, 3,000 people gabbing over beers, noting that no matter how gentle or ungraspable, however ellipsoidal or ill-suited a song might be for this environment, if it's delivered with a concluding flourish or swell into an unambiguous final attack, everyone in the house halts their conversation, swivels toward the stage, barks approval, which multiplied by several thousand becomes a triumphal roar. If a piece conversely generates hard-won musical momentum but lands softly in a final decrescendo, 1,500 conversations resume. Beyond the reintroduction of electronic sound through the camouflage of acoustic and electronic resonance, roiling and serene, The next wrinkle was to experiment with ripping interjections of noise, malfunctioning punctuation punctuating malfunction, efforts from within to shred the texture of the proceedings, to crash the airplane, fight or flight simulator, fricative sizzle of electricity. The fader's path is straight and true. Scale is a turn of the dial when there's no recognizable source to emerge. Smug circuitry, engorged transistors, the fictive sound of electricity. Two acoustic guitars in a white dissolve are replaced by a pair of electric organs shoulder to shoulder at center stage, varying only by virtue of the color of their molded plastic casings, a shade of oxygen-rich Vespa red next to Olivetti green-gray. The recourse to volume returns a previously refused depth and dimensionality they had cautiously rebuilt over the last year, the group no longer tasking themselves with always bringing the wrong music. Hypothesis confirmed, an endless supply of wrong music. Quietly approaching, quietly receding, quietly rescinded, one crossfade, one calendar year. The homecoming gig begins with stepwise electric organs in waltzing optimistic ascent. A unison makeshift mantra from identical instruments moves out of and back into phase, the composition a memory game of extending and retracting a simple found object phrase, hypnosis by seesaw, fort da fingering, exercises designed to satisfy. The drummer bides his time, handsomely reinforcing the fact of his not playing. This first piece of the evening is a public warming up, essential to remember how good it feels to exercise as part of a team. Everyone stretches, spines elongate for a better view of what's happening on stage. The audience is invited to recalibrate its means of measurement. Time passes like so. Time passes like sufficiently many. Time passes as crossings of a 0 point when the room is full, and the musical phrase pronounced slowly and with great clarity, repeated again and again, altered by the movement of time as well as the addition and subtraction and substitution of notes, the shifting of stresses within a phrase as experienced by the quorum. Time passes until the drummer removes his shirt, makes a face like he's leaping out of an airplane, a face like the chute's not opening, or he's been given the worst imaginable news about his family, and he responds with an anguished cymbal swell. The force field that is his pummeling of cymbals cues the organs to conclude their synchronized opening statements. They slow to a halt and swell to peak volume with forearm clusters. Everyone is privy to a unique perspective within this riot of sound. Just turn your head. Everyone probes the same impossibly thick foliage in vain. The sound is what your attention grabs, that to which it clings, cognizes, an engine turning over but not catching, several octaves higher, voices chattering or chiding or harmonizing with supreme feeling, and in the uppermost register, a furious bagpipe moire, making its play for the last bit of oxygen in the room. Why the metaphors? Air, as upper limit, that which exceeds sound object. Fashion a sphere, into which sound doesn't leak. Play, overhead. Trace figure eights above bent staves, chewed arms, viral multiplication of note heads in a cartoon rendering of the gig. The drummer unhooks his jaw, that's a myth, widens his mouth still further, cocks eyebrows, locks eyes with the red organist, turns to make contact with the green-gray organist, back to the red organist, the drummer uncertain which of his bandmates to cue. In the end, he closes his eyes. Fuck the both of them, they're professionals. They execute a tape edit of a transition too severe to be believed, finessing a subsequent splice every 16 measures when there are measures. Each improbable insert arrives in a different tempo, undergoes whiptail change, or hangs poisonous like a cloud. At this point, the organs are forsaken in favor of two electric guitars, the better to fashion a distinctive gestalt for each of these miniatures. Eventually, the ball finds a pocket on the roulette wheel that's neither red nor black. Green 00 tells the guitarist to strum an atavistic 16 bars of a C major chord atop the drummer's summoning of his first backbeat. No more bets. How long until the audience breaks the silence? It will not. This first number concluded, one of the two guitarists approaches the mic, offers a song in prose of a kind, sung in sentences, insufficient information, gratuitous information. Better they don't serve beer in glasses. The singer laughs off the impact, shakes like a dog exiting a bath. By the end of this snippet of song, there's little indication that a full drink has been hurled. He's soaking. Yes, the guitar a tad sticky, but the eyes of the audience betray not a thing, and certainly no one. Everyone blinked. The warmth of feeling rekindles as the group resumes its peculiar stumbling forward motion, a musical digressiveness based on jumbling the proportions of songwriting recipes so that a bridge lengthens to an endless span. A series of verses atrophies to a single iteration, chorus shrinks to grunt. 3 misshapen songs later, there's another exploding liquid fist, the singer blindsided in the act of shaping the first word of a song. Not only the aim, but the timing. It would be something to write a poem about. The group delivers what remains of the song in an instrumental version while the singer scans the audience for the perpetrator and intuits not the slightest change on the collective face of the audience. There is no collective face. There really is not. Just expectant eyes and ears and a homogeneity that over time will become apparent to all. 2 beers from the blue, and on they rumble. Audience, which side are you on? I'm going to play some music. Any questions thus far? There's no moderator but me.
How autobiographical is the beer incident?
Pardon me?
How autobiographical is the beer incident?
There's very little that's invented in these books. Unnameable Books. Also, in addition to Good Night, the Pleasure Was Ours, I brought copies of an artist book called Projectile, made with the designer Rado Geiser and the artist John Sparagano. So check that out at the front. Thank you all very much.